Randy Langford's a man who's had it all and he's lost it all, but that's far from the end of the story. But before we talk about the way the story turns out, let's go back about 20 years ago, when Randy first began to work on his father-in-law's cattle ranch. He didn't know much about ranching at the time, but he knew he wanted to succeed, no matter what it cost.
Close to 20 years. I never took a vacation. I just couldn't pull I saw that as detracting from what I really wanted.
I wanted to know what was driving him to work like this.
My ego was insatiable. It had an insatiable appetite, and the way I fed it was with the appearance of success, which was money and power, notoriety, influence.
Randy's hard work seemed to be paying off. Those looking in on his life saw what looked like a very successful young man. But what is true success?
Owned my own home by the time I was 22, 3 years old. Had an interest in this large operation that was very successful, lucrative. And, had kids who were well behaved and pretty much, the perfect life from all indications from the outside looking in. But the more I had or more I acquired, the more I wanted. And it was just never enough.
But Randy became aware that something very significant was missing in his life.
I had no meaningful relationships with anyone, actually. And the reason for that is that I just saw people as a means to the end of feeding my ego. So even though I may have been doing things that appeared very altruistic and charitable, my motivation was to promote me through those acts.
His years of using people as pawns, of manipulating others to get what he wanted, resulted in personal isolation.
When you treat people that way, soon the only people who can stand being around you are the people who try to work you in the same way. And so as far as meaningful, intimate, transparent relationships, there just weren't any.
Randy began to examine his life.
I thought what I wanted was this work and the fruits of my labor, but it became like a prison to me that I couldn't get away from.
While he wasn't happy with his life, at least others saw him as successful. But then, Randy's life reached a crisis.
Just as things were really rocking along well, I thought because of what I was doing the same things, and things just all of a sudden started going south. That was evident in my business life as well as in relationships. My first marriage ended, divorced, and I'm remarried not long after that, and that one didn't last a year. In my business circles, deals that normally had come very easy for me now were not coming so easy. And I was losing some of the clout that I had in that community, so the people who had been hanging around me because of that clout started going to different people looking for, what other people could provide, because I couldn't provide it anymore.
But even though his business and his family were falling apart, it still wasn't enough for Randy to seek another path. It took something more.
I had lower back surgery also early on when I was about 25. But it had been fine up until that point. And until one morning I went to pick up a trailer tongue early one morning, and I knew what happened. I felt my lower back blow out.
Randy spent a number of weeks in the hospital in Austin, Texas, recuperating from surgery. But 4 days after returning home, he sat up in bed and coughed, and he blew out his back again. And the doctor said, "Randy, you're going to have to get out of ranching."
My whole identity, all my success, whatever standing I had and influence I had was all wrapped up in who I was and what I did.
His brother Lyndon and his wife took Randy into their home while he was convalescing. It was during this time in Austin that his brother's friends began to share with Randy the positive impact that Lyndon had had on their lives.
They'd start telling me, "Oh, your brother Lyndon, he has changed my life. You cannot imagine. I wouldn't be where I am today. I wouldn't be the person I am today had it not been for your brother." And these were literally hundreds of people.
These heartwarming stories about Lyndon had had a dramatic effect on Randy. He compared his own life to Lyndon's, and as he reflected, he began to radically transform his views about himself and about his relationships.
I don't think I could name a single human being who would say, man, my life is a lot better because Randy Langford had been in it. And that just hit me.
Randy was depressed and ashamed of the life he'd been living. At first, he considered living alone so he couldn't harm anyone else. At the same time, he began to attend a small church, and although Randy was trying to live as a loner, several men from the church persuaded him to attend a weekend retreat.
What I experienced during that weekend was, I have a hard time describing it even today, and I've tried to describe it to several people. It was unconditional love in amounts that were beyond my imagination. I didn't know that people could love that way.
And while he didn't hear an audible voice, he began to have a clear sense that he was receiving traveling directions for the rest of his journey.
Randy, you have been brought here to see what love looks like. This is what love looks like. Now, go love people like this.
After the retreat, Randy's vision for his future transformed into something very different than his ego-centered past. He would become a completely different person, a person who would focus on others first.
For me, it was this incredible revelation of unconditional love, not requiring anything in return, not asking anything in return. And so I left there now with a new purpose, and I was completely convinced, and still am to this moment, that my only purpose for being, for drawing a breath and taking up space here, is to love people unconditionally, whoever might be placed in my life at any one time. If their life is not better because Randy Langford is in it, I'm messing up. I am not living up to my purpose.
Randy's motivation for living took a 180-degree turn from his days of seeking to satisfy his own ego. He discovered the paradox of finding joy.
If we love unconditionally and without regard for anything in return, that's when we receive the most in return. But we only receive that if we aren't seeking anything in return. It's when I start thinking about being happy is when I am the most unhappy. And it's when I start thinking about someone else's happiness is when I'm the happiest.
Once again, Randy's brother Lyndon played a key role in his life. Lyndon suggested, much to Randy's amazement, that he should go to college and then on to law school. And he did. And along the way, he discovered a special brand of law called restorative justice that allowed him to connect his new passion for loving others to his career as an attorney.
I became aware of a process called restorative justice. And it was very different than the retributive justice system that I was involved in at the law firm. And I was intrigued by it because it involved healing of relationships. And I had experienced healing of relationships. And as my life was changed, other people's lives were changed by this process that ultimately is just about how we were all created to relate with one another and to heal harms. When we have committed harms or suffered harms, how do we find that healing? And that's all the process is about.
From a self-centered egomaniac, a young rancher who used people simply to get what he wanted, to a man passionately dedicated to serving others, Randy's story of transformation is truly amazing.
It is two different people. Transformation occurs. We often hear people say, you know, a leopard can't change her spots, and maybe the leopard can't, but there are powers that can change that leopard spot, and I'm walking proof of that.